technology could soon turn us all into superhumans. What's wrong with that? Let's talk about it with Dr. Fuz Rana on Steve Brown, etc.
He's an old white guy, an author, broadcaster, and seminary professor who's sick of religion. And he's brought friends. Please welcome Steve Brown, etc.
We are so glad you're here, and this is going to be an absolutely outstanding program. It's called Steve Brown, etc., and I'm Steve, the aforementioned old white guy, very soon to no longer be called the old white guy, because Fuzz has a chapter on anti-aging technology.
Ooh.
And I'm going to get a pill. I'm going to grow hair. This paunch will disappear. And all the whiteness will revert to brownness.
And what do we call you?
On this program.
And
the young white guy, okay?
Oh, that's what we're going to call you.
Steve 2.0.
Matthew Porter's with us. Matthew sent his kids back to school this week. No more lazy summer days. There were tears, some cries of "this isn't fair," but eventually Matthew calmed down.
That's true.
And our producer Jinx is working hard in the little glass booth. Speaking of future technology, Jinx is working on a new business.
Yes.
What is it?
So I'm combining food delivery services with time travel. So while the people are still bickering and trying to figure out what to call and order, the guy's just going to show up and be like, hey, in an hour you're going to pick the Applebee's, so here it is.
I like that.
That is so
And I'm out.
So the assumption that they actually will come to a conclusion at some point in the future.
Yes.
They
That's
would.
right,
Yeah.
but they'll know before
I didn't make them choose it. I just,
because time is elastic.
Yeah.
Who
Listen,
made that
look,
up?
I'll invest in that.
I'm really doing it, Kathy.
Did you make that up or did Matthew make that up?
Listen, we don't reveal the magician's secrets. We just enjoy the show.
Okay, whatever.
And John Myers is our video guy. He says he doesn't. I just said, we got to mention John. He's doing a lot of this work. And he said, I don't want people to know I work for you. This is not a good thing. So John Myers is our video producer. And Dr. George Bingham is the president of Key Life. And George is fine with the concept of enhanced superhumans as long as they're rich and give to Key Life. And then Kathy is the soft, feminine side of the program. Kathy will soon spend some time at a baking school to learn, not to teach. Can you believe that?
I know, I'm so excited.
You're going to learn to make croissants?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
And other stuff.
Well,
Eclairs.
Count me in.
yeah, we'll be the tester.
Cream
I'll
puffs.
help you
I'll
with
bring them
homework.
all in. I'll bring them
Yeah.
all in afterwards. And people can while they're listening to the interview, they can watch you all eat
I'll
and drop food
help
all
you
over
with your
the front of you. and
thesis
everything.
project.
Dr. Fazale Fuz Rana is the vice president of research and apologetics at Reasons to Believe. He's authored several groundbreaking books. When he burps, they publish it, including Who Was Adam? Creating Life in a Lab, The Cell's Design. He has a PhD in chemistry with an emphasis on biochemistry.
What?
From Ohio. I don't know. I just read this. Ohio University. And his latest book, which I hold in my nicotine-stained hands, is Humans Too Old. Scientific 2.0.
2.0.
2.0.
I'm caught up in this old thing. I'm going to take a pill.
Where's that
and
pill,
turn
Fuzz? We need it.
It's Freudian, and I'm doing his
Please
best
send the
I
pill. Please.
Scientific, philosophical, and theological perspectives on transhumanism.
Told you I wasn't going to write that up there. It's too much.
First, some instructions from the oral cavity of the old guy. If you don't keep the fodder down low, this is going to be a wasted hour, okay? We've got to understand what you're saying, and that's the rule. We do that with you, and we do that with you. And so let's start off. What's transhumanism?
Well, maybe your listeners and your viewers are unfamiliar with the idea, but it's an idea that's been around for probably well over 100 years. It's an idea that goes back to the early 1900s, and a scientist by the name of J.B.S. Haldane, who was a famous British geneticist, who wrote a book called The Atlas, where he projected that in the future we could use things like what we today understand as gene editing and artificial womb technology to take control of our own evolution as a human species and evolve human beings into kind of a new and improved version of ourselves. And this idea has, in recent years, gained credibility thanks to advances that are happening in gene editing and computer-brain interface technology. But in a nutshell, it's this idea that we have a moral obligation as human beings to augment our bodies beyond our normal biological capabilities using, again, technology with the idea of mitigating pain and suffering, promoting human progress and flourishing, creating a utopian future. And if the technology could even potentially one day give us control over our life expectancy, maybe extend our life expectancy to the point that we would be practically immortal. And so people are using or looking to science and technology as a mode for our salvation. And so there's a very strong religious undertow to this transhumanist idea.
When you write a book like this, there's considerable ambivalence, isn't there? Kind of like watching your mother-in-law go off a cliff in your new Cadillac. I mean, there's some good stuff in this, and there's some stuff that scares the spit out of me.
Well, this is the real complexity of transhumanism in terms of how we need to think about engaging it. Because many of the technologies that are fueling the transhumanist vision from a biomedical standpoint could literally be transformative. There are people that are now saying that we could very well have treatments for genetic disorders for which currently we have no treatment whatsoever. That maybe, just maybe, we could eradicate certain genetic disorders from the human gene pool. For people that are suffering from brain injuries or strokes, who are locked in, who can't communicate, computer-brain interfaces could one day allow them to actually communicate through computer software. For people that are amputees, these computer-brain interfaces can allow them to control robotic limbs with their thoughts. Or for people that are quadriplegic, to be able to gain mobility through exoskeletons that, again, they can control with their thoughts. So there's an enormous amount of good connected to this technology. But of course, there's also a lot of ethical issues that arise. But then on the other hand, it's a very frightening future to think of the power of this technology and what it could actually do to us in terms of our human identity.
Matthew and I were discussing your book a little bit earlier in my office, and Matthew said something profound. He said this technology is going to go to who, the rich, who get all the good stuff, and we're going to have an elite bunch of people controlling everybody. Does that ring a bell with you?
Oh, yeah. That's one of the major concerns that have been raised with, this kind of human enhancement technology. I mean, we already have this problem with medical technology. Medicine is becoming more and more expensive, and not everybody can afford, medical care. And so you wind up getting the medical haves and have-nots. Well, now think about that in terms of human enhancements. We're going to wind up with those people that are the elites having access to the technology, which presumably is going to create an advantage for them, which then allows them to get access to even better technology. And so very quickly we wind up with a stratification of our culture. So issues relating to justice are very much in the forefront when it comes to, how do we ensure this technology is used well, but also do we ensure that everybody has equitable access to it? So that's just one of the myriad, ethical issues that result from, this technology that's emerging.
Fuz, are people, Christians, anything new we're against. We don't even like music unless it was written by a white man in the 17th century. But so we don't like change, and so we're against it. I mean, you just began that way. And I don't want to be that, and I'm sure you don't either, but are there bioethical discussions going on now among, well, we're going to have to wait for you to answer this on the other side of the break, because having somebody like Fuz is very, very expensive, and we got to make a buck so we can pay him his fee. Nah, he's doing it free. But we'll find out a lot more that is a lot more scary than you ever believed on the other side of the break. The book is Humans 2.0, not 2.0. But we're going to talk about age and fixing that later. The book is Humans 2.0, Scientific, Philosophical, and Theological Perspectives on Transhumanism. Our guest is Fuz Rana, and he's promised to keep the fodder down low so we can understand what he's talking about. Fuz, before the break, I was interested in whether or not these issues are just being written about by you, or is there ethical and moral are there ethical and moral conversations taking place in scientific and academic circles about these issues?
Yeah, well, this idea of transhumanism has, in the last few years, become academic mainstream. And so people at the upper echelons of technology development and bioethics are really actively engaging with transhumanism. And one of the challenges is the technology is progressing at such a fast pace that nobody has even time to properly digest what the technology could potentially be used for, let alone deliberate ethically as to whether we should develop the technology, or if we do develop it, how do we properly deploy it? And in fact, many people that work in ethics right now are saying that we actually don't have ethical categories that properly help us to even categorize what's happening now in technology development. And to me, this is where I think the Christian worldview can become so very important, because people are calling for a new kind of a new framework in bioethics. And what we argue in the book is that actually there's an ancient ethical framework that we ought to consider, and that's the one that flows out of the Christian worldview. And the idea that human beings are made in God's image, that idea is so powerful from an ethical standpoint that it actually can serve as an able guide for how the technology should be developed and used. And so it's really important, I think, for Christians to be able to enter into this conversation at the highest academic levels, but also with the man and the woman on the street. We have a real opportunity, I think, to shape our culture if we play our cards well.
Some people are not going to do that, so I'm glad you're around.
Fuz, we kind of touched on a little bit about what the enhanced technology could mean for human existence as far as editing genes to remove genetic disorders. And that to me is still in the realm of like, okay, that feels like a kind of a next step, certainly groundbreaking, but not ethically ambiguous yet. But what are some of the other things that are maybe within like the next 5 years or so, as far as truly enhancing human existence, as far as learning and understanding and creating kind of a second version of Homo sapiens?
Well, I mean, this idea of even gene editing being maybe a little bit away in the future. Right now, there are clinical studies that people are pursuing on a small scale of using gene editing to treat a handful of genetic disorders. So this may be an application that shows up in the clinic sooner rather than later. But one of the concerns with the CRISPR gene editing is that it's so powerful and so easy to use and so inexpensive. In fact, for under $200, you could go to Amazon.com and order a CRISPR gene editing kit that you can get the next day if you got Amazon Prime, and do gene editing experiments on your kitchen counter. These are very basic experiments, but you can spend more money and actually get kits that will allow you to do more and more sophisticated things. In fact, there's a biochemist by the name of Josiah Zahner, who actually is pioneering what's called a biology DIY movement, a biology do-it-yourself movement. And he actually has developed a CRISPR kit that will disable the gene for a protein called myostatin. And this is a protein that controls muscle growth and development. And if that protein is disabled, muscle growth and development happens in an uncontrolled way. And so people have actually done gene editing on dogs and racehorses, producing these Arnold Schwarzenegger-like looking animals. And he's actually at a Foresight conference had a booth where he very publicly injected himself with the myostatin gene editing kit, being the first example of somebody that has actually done gene editing on himself. And so you could very well in the near future have people setting up operations in different parts of the world where they offer gene editing to people that want to enhance their strength or want to enhance their intellectual capabilities. And so this is stuff that's actually right on our doorstep.
Oh, man.
And the technology is progressing so rapidly that every day you turn around, there are improvements in the gene editing capabilities that make it even more and more powerful. And yeah, there are technical hurdles that have to be solved, but those technical hurdles are following left and right. And so, maybe the responsible use of the technology may be a decade away, but the irresponsible use of the technology is happening right now.
And so it seems like there's a feeling that when we see this technology for the first time, it might not necessarily be after a series of studies and control groups. It may kind of burst out from the underground from a completely DIY kind of almost rebellious kind of point of view.
Yep. And this is the thing that's scary and frustrating, because we want to regulate the technology. But right now, there's not any means or mode to regulate it. You have these scientific groups that will issue guidelines for how the technology should be used. But then, those are voluntary. Or you might have the World Health Organization laying out guidelines, but it's up to a country to adopt it or not. And so just last week, there was an announcement of a scientist in China who created the very first human monkey embryo that was a chimera. And he was from the Salk Institute in the United States, a highly reputable institution, but the institution would not allow him to do the work here in the U.S., so he went to China where the regulations were different and was able to do those experiments. And so you can see there might be countries that set up genetic tourism industries, fostering, these, gene editing companies where people will travel and get the gene editing, technique applied to them of their choice. So again, I think it's highly irresponsible and unwise to do it, but it doesn't mean that people won't, particularly if you're chasing after greater intelligence, greater strength, greater psychological well-being.
Oh, Fuzz, this is, by the way, I'm a cynical old preacher. I don't have a very high view of human nature. You get money and the kinds of things you're talking about involved, and I don't see a way that you're going to stop it. I mean, this horse is out of the barn, and he's already got a saddle on, and
huge
he's
muscles
riding across the plains, right? And he's been shot with one of your shots, and he's really fast. So we're going to talk about, short of murder, how do you stop this sort of thing, or how do you get people to stop and think before they do something really, really dangerous? Hey, you don't want to miss a bit of this. We, like Jesus, will return. Listening to Steve Brown, etc., and our guest, one of our favorite people is Fuz Rana, and he's written a book that's scary but hopeful, Humans 2.0. And by the way, Fuz is a part of Reasons to Believe, and you ought to check that website out. It's reasons.org, and if you want to follow Fuz on Twitter, it's RTB_F Rana, RANA. All right, let's get back and deal with what we were dealing with before the break. How do you stop it?
Well, I think it's really important as Christians, and you're mentioning this at the top of the show, Steve, we can't just simply condemn the technology, or we can't just simply ignore it, hoping that it's somehow going to go away, because neither are going to have any influence on how the technology develops. We really have to engage, and we have to engage well. And that means that we all have to do our homework and try to understand, what the technology actually is, and also be able to articulate, again, a Christian worldview and really a Christian system of ethics. This idea that we are made in God's image is such a powerful idea, because it means that every human being has worth and value. And so therefore, we want to do what we can to mitigate pain and suffering, to promote human flourishing. That same technique that can create these super dogs and these super horses could be used to treat somebody with a muscle wasting disease as well. So there's good that is associated with the technology. So we want to promote the development and the use of that technology. But at the same time, we recognize that human beings are sinful, and that we want to do what we can also to prevent exploiting human beings, to ensure that there's a just use of the technology. And this is where, again, the image of God concept becomes so powerful. And because we bear God's image, we've been given a mandate to have dominion over the planet. And that dominion is, in a sense, a prescription to develop science and technology. So the Christian worldview has a proper understanding of what technology can do, and how it can be used for good, and how it can go awry. And so as Christians, we have a lot to contribute to the conversation that happens about how the technology should be used. And if we are able to exercise our voices and exercise them well, I think what we can do is actually leverage this technology to usher in the kingdom of God, if you will, to begin to see the kingdom of God established here on earth. So to me, this is frightening, but if we manage it and we are, again, engaging it, we can influence it in a way that glorifies God. And so to me, the idea of should we play God isn't the right question, because as human beings made in God's image, we have no choice but to play God. But really the question is, are we trying to take God's place? And so for Christians, we can help utilize the technology in a way that we're playing God, but not trying to take God's place.
Fuzz, during the break, Matthew brought up a subject, and I wondered if you could just briefly, we're coming, and we have about 2 minutes until the break, but if you could just comment on that on the air. Matthew brought up the issue of like literally downloading knowledge.
Yeah, well, there's a technology called computer-brain interface technology, where humans with their thoughts can learn to control, again, computer hardware and software, but also they can receive signals from machines that their brain can process and interpret. And there have been some studies done where people have been able to pose like a mathematical question to a test subject who has the computer-brain interface wired, and then give the information, feed the answer through the computer-brain interface to the brain, and they know what the answer is.
Whoa.
Or you can use computer-brain interface technology through the internet, and I could actually, with my thoughts, control the movement of your limbs if you have a computer-brain interface tethered to you as well. And so
It's like remote desktop for people.
Yeah, you bat
exactly.
your eyes and go to Google.
I could balance my checkbook.
I could have passed trig and analyt.
Yeah, but you have people now like Michio Kaku, the physicist, talking about the brain net that's going to replace the internet, where we all will be basically tethered to our brains will be tethered to one another, and we'll be able to share insights and experiences with one another and information with one another through through this interface. Now, we still are a way away from something like that happening, but when you again look at the advances in computer-brain interface technology, this idea of uploading our minds to a computer system, though I don't think will ever happen, it's the type of thing that inspires transhumanists.
Yeah, I bet. I have a friend, academic friend, who is, as we speak, working on connections between pilots and their airplanes, even reading emotions and thoughts and applying that technologically to the art of flying.
Wow.
It's getting so. Listen, I have a new car that even makes dinner for me. I'm gonna opt out all of this and just walk everywhere and tell the world, just leave me alone. I know all I want to know. I don't want to go there, and frankly, I don't want to live forever. I'm getting sick of myself. And there's a time when you say, I'm out of here. And you really are. Well, we're going to talk about taxes on the other side of the break. Keep it up. Don't go anywhere, because we're coming back. Listening to Steve Brown, etc. We're so glad you're here. The book I hold in my hands is Humans 2.0. It's by Fuz Rana. It's a book you ought to get. It's and Fuz writes in a way you can understand. It doesn't mean you're going to give it to your third grader, but you need to spend some time with this book, because these are issues. And Christians opt out of issues. We're not even a part of the conversation. And one of the reasons that I rise up and call Fuz blessed is because he doesn't. He's got his finger in those pies, and he's involved, and he's talking.
Unless your third grader has been genetically enhanced. Then
Yeah, right, of course. If he has one of those shots.
You should check with your wife, George, who teaches third grade.
Yeah, it's
She
going
might
to put
have
her
one.
out of business, that's for sure. They'll be way beyond her and just have the Google gene implanted. Plus, Steve mentioned being cynical, and frankly, being even realistic, and certainly having a sense from theology and so forth of the kind of the nature of man and so forth, it's hard not to be a little bit frightened of the possibilities with something like this. But you've talked about, certainly the good possibilities with it and the role that Christians can have in this. Where would you bring those together? What is the Christian's role in talking to this subject and being involved in this subject, and both in the short term and the longer term?
Well, we've kind of, talked a little bit about how Christians can contribute to the ethical conversations about how the technology should be used. And, I think it's really important for young people in the church who are interested in science and engineering and medicine to really consider actually going into fields that involve developing these technologies, because as Christians, they represent salt and light in those communities and can have a profound influence on, again, how the technology can be used for good and how to minimize its the exploitation of human beings and the misuse of the technology. But to me, there's another place where Christianity, I think, can become very important as we look towards a future where transhumanism is a prominent idea. And that is to recognize that there's some remarkable parallels between Christianity and transhumanism. And there's nothing really wrong with the transhumanist vision in this sense. They recognize that the world that we live in is broken, and they want to use technology to fix it, to promote human flourishing, to try to bring an end to pain and suffering, to try to create some kind of utopia. They recognize that there's something unnatural about our death as human beings. And so they want to correct that. They want to try to overcome, the sting of death, if you will. And everybody has a sense that as human beings, we have a purpose, we have a destiny. Everybody wants genuine hope. And for people that are transhumanists, they're seeking to fulfill this need that every human being has through science and technology. But yet as Christians, we realize that the way that we would argue that need could ultimately be filled, where death could be overcome, where justices can be corrected, where humans flourish, where there's no more pain and suffering, it's through the gospel, it's through the person of Christ. And so we're looking for essentially a utopia with the return of Christ versus trying to create that utopia through technology. And so really that is the opportunity I think that we have as Christians, is because transhumanism is really laying bare the need that everyone has for the gospel, and what a golden opportunity to be able to impact our culture with the gospel. And I think in the next decade or so, the biggest competitor to the Christian gospel will be the transhumanist gospel. And so it's really important for us to be able to show why that's a false gospel, and why the gospel that's rooted in Christ is actually the true hope that we have.
But at the same time, to affirm, their natural interest and so forth in the transhumanism. I mean, to turn that as, your motivation to do something there makes sense, but here's where it ultimately should go.
That's exactly right. And, when you look at the work that's been done in the history and the philosophy of technology, almost to a person, everybody recognizes that technology, while it can solve problems, always creates new problems that sometimes are worse than the problems they solve.
Yeah.
And technology always has unintended consequences, and it always disappoints us in some way. And so I think transhumanists, if they're guilty of anything, it's naivety, thinking that technology can actually give us utopia and can give us genuine salvation. And so I think it's very easy by looking at the work that others have done in the philosophy of technology to be able to very quickly make an argument that most people realize is a valid argument why technology can never truly save us.
It can create hell. Matthew was talking about when they in China did the monkey human thing. He said that everybody he knew would say, look, and he's talking about unbelievers. That's wrong. There's something wrong with that. I don't know why it's wrong, but it's wrong. And there is a moral standard that's a part of our DNA. C.S. Lewis referenced it. And we can take advantage of that as Christians with these kinds of discussions. I mean, they're going to create a living hell. It scares the spit out of me. Not the good part of the technology, but the bad part of the hearts that are creating it. And, you know, this could go in ways that would make the worst science fiction seem like Sunday school stories if we're not very careful. Fuz, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, we really have no choice but to engage this and engage it well. And not to be frightened, but to see it as an opportunity to advance the gospel.
That's true. Are you, and we just have a few seconds, so it might be a yes or no. Are you hopeful?
Yes, I am. I'm hopeful, and I'm excited about what the future is going to look like. Because I think, again, there's some real opportunities here for good to come out of these advances, and real opportunities for the gospel, I think, in ways that haven't existed in recent years.
And have you been able yourself to kind of test it with unbelieving friends to see their reaction to the things that you're saying?
I have, and in fact, Ken Samples and who's my co-author, we're looking to actively set up a panel with some transhumanists to just talk about two differing perspectives on transhumanism. So great opportunities.
Would you come on with us and tell us what happened if it takes place?
I sure will.
You're a good man. You're always fun, Fuz. I'm glad you're around, and I'm glad you're part of our family, because I wouldn't want you on the other side. God bless you, Fuz, for spending this time with us.
Thank you.
Guys, we're going to back out for a little bit, and then we'll tell you on the other side of the break the person to whom we're going to do this next week. Man, what a great hour with Fuz Rana. He's always that way. And he's a little weird the way we are, so he fits in. But he's an amazing man. And guys, I don't like this. I don't like any change. I really don't. Never have. If I had my way, things would be exactly as they were the day I was born. But we can't afford to do that. We've opted out of too much. We've opted out of pop culture. We've opted out of entertainment. And Matthew, you have opted back in, and you're doing some things that are really important.
Thank you.
And we've opted out of science, and we've opted out of academics. And we just can't do that because we are the salt. We're the leaven. And I didn't say that. I mean, the guy said it. Jesus said it. And so we need to be a part of the dough, as it were. We need to have our fingers in those pies, as it were. We need to go places where these kinds of things are discussed.
Well, I always remind myself, and sometimes it sounds too easy, but, last time I checked, God was still in control. And we've seen the end, and he wins. So, whatever he takes us through, he'll drag us through it.
Yeah.
And I hope they never make that human-monkey hybrid. But if they do,
You want one?
I want to see it.
I'm getting a new German Shepherd. I'm going to get one of those shots for him.
With 5 legs?
I'm going to scare this. Yeah, man. I'm going to have a super dog at home. And Shepherds are already super dogs. You give them a shot, man, there ain't no stopping. Kathy.
Yes.
Who's going to be on next week?
Next week's going to be really unique and
For
different.
the people that don't live forever.
Yeah. Caleb Wild is going to be with us. He's a funeral director. Yeah. And he's
Whose idea was this?
Well, his book is titled Confessions of a Funeral Director, How Death Saved My Life. And this is somebody that your friend, Eric Guzman, has wanted wanted to speak with. And so we thought this would be a perfect opportunity since you aren't going to be with us next week. So Eric will be the host, and he will be finding out how death changed Caleb Wild's life. Saved his life.
I'm glad. That's a relief.
I know. Well, we
old
figured
people don't
I
like
know.
to spend time with funeral directors.
I know.
Okay,
Especially
It's in
really
the-
old people.
It's in the rule book of old people.
That's right.
Stay out of funeral homes.
Yep.
You hear that lady who was 94 and her husband died at 98? Funeral director said, "How old are you?" And she said, "I'm 94. Hardly worth my even going home." Guys, we're out of here. But we're gonna come back next week, and we hope you do too. Same times, same place. Between now and then, don't do anything we wouldn't, and that gives you a wide, wide berth.